We all experience challenging and difficult situations in life. In the face of these complexities, it is not always clear how to respond, what to do, or what to avoid. It's easy to get stuck in these moments and stop moving forward in life. Wholeness with Naomi is a program that explores our experiences with such encounters and provides tools and strategies that can enable anyone facing these hardships to continue walking their path in life. We can't wait to meet you on this journey. Tune in, your life is about to change for the better.
Welcome to our program, Wholeness with Naomi, where we talk about different and sometimes difficult situations that you may find yourself in. More importantly, the tools that you can use as you navigate in those paths. Health is defined not just merely in absence of a disease, but we're looking at the different states one may be in. We're looking at your mental state, we're looking at your physiological state. Today on the show, we want to talk about the mental side of health. Joining us on the program today is Dr Mwamuka. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Naomi. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. And today we're talking about the subject of mental health, which I think you're really quite familiar with, as that is your day-to-day job.
Which is a blessing and sometimes a challenge, working as a psychiatrist, but basically that's my bread and butter, mental health issues, yes.
Thank you for coming to the show once again. Do take us through, when we're talking about the subject of mental health, it's something that is quite topical. In many places, you just hear that phrase being thrown around, mental health, mental health. What is mental health?
It's a good place to start at because a lot of times you do hear people saying, oh, my mental health is not good today. My mental health, as though it is something that changes, sometimes is not there, sometimes is present. But generally, when we speak from the angle of medicine, for example, we talk about mental health as being a state of well-being in which you are able to cope with the normal stresses of your life and you're able to function, whether is it at work, be it at school, and you're able to contribute meaningfully to whatever community you belong to. And community is defined in a different way. It is not just a geographical location in which you stay in, but community might be the church in which you go to. Community might be your ladies group. Your community might be, your old friends from school. So communities can be different. It could be defined by the profession that you're in. So once you find yourself having a state where you're able to contribute to that specific community or those different communities you belong to, then that's what mental health is. It's not something that is sometimes present or sometimes absent.
Okay, that's quite key. One thing that's really coming out from your sharing, you said one is able to function even with the stresses of life being present. So what remains constant is the stresses of life will remain there, but the ability for one to be able to adjust, to adapt through the different stresses that you find yourself as you go through life.
Yes, and that is very true. So stress in itself is not a disease, and many times you'll find people don't come to me as a psychiatrist because you're stressed. But once you start being unable to function, be it unable to function in your social circumstances, where you're unable to have meaningful relationships at home, romantic relationships or friendships, where you're unable to function in your professional space, in the work that you do, you're unable now to complete the tasks that you used to be able to maintain your job, or if you're a student, you're no longer able to function academically and maintain your academic performance, then we know that it's most likely that now, this is more than stress. And this is where your mental health professionals start coming in, or the people that are mental health supporters come in sometimes to help people, yes.
That is quite broad.
Very broad indeed.
So are there any common challenges, even the stressors in courts, or challenges rather, that people experience when we're talking about the subject of mental health?
In our profession, if I look from a professional side of things and from a medical side of things, we always talk about evidence or scientific evidence. So we do know that one of the most common mental health conditions or that people suffer from is that there's the stress itself, but there's also depression when it comes to something that requires you to actually seek help. So depression and anxiety are the most common mental health conditions that people generally suffer from. It does not mean that they always seek help for it, but a lot of people do suffer from, and there are different staggering figures. So you will find, for example, in Zimbabwe, we know that 1 in every 4 people will suffer from a common mental health disorder in their lifetime.
So I'm just counting the number of people in this studio. I'm thinking how many are falling in that number right now?
And it's very possible. And it then brings to light the issue that, unfortunately, with the mental health condition, when you come to your psychiatrist, your counselor, it's different from suffering from high blood pressure. Everyone sits with their family, they go to a funeral, to a wedding, they say, BP yangu yakakwira, yakanzi iri pa 140. So with mental health, unfortunately, or being depressed or anxious, there's no number for us to measure objectively to show you that, no, today it is at 5 or it is at 7. And that's where sometimes the challenge comes in to say, how can you say that I'm depressed when you did not measure anything and you're just using a set of symptoms to define that I am depressed?
I want us to go into that as well. Whilst we're talking about one is finding themselves, so they're saying rather, I am depressed. What is depression? What does it look like? How does it present?
So depression, like I said, is one of the most common mental health conditions, not only in Zimbabwe, but globally. You will find time and again big organizations like the WHO, they bring out these big reports about what's happening around the world in different countries. So it's not something that is peculiar to us in Zimbabwe because, maybe it has something to do with the fact that I do not have enough money and I'm living in poverty. So even those who have money also suffer from it. Okay. So they also experience depression. They also have a high burden of depression even in those countries, or even within the same country. Some will say those who are on the north side of the Harare are the ones who experience depression more, or the south. There's nothing like that. Or those who are in the urban area, no, they don't suffer from depression, or they think they would suffer from depression more. So when one then says that they are depressed, remember we talked about the intersection between stress and depression. How does one then differentiate to say, no, this is just stress? I'll give a good example. It's the end of the month. We are all getting paid or not getting paid. Most of us are probably having sleepless nights, trying to count down the money, but maybe that money is already spent before it even comes.
Or it's not even adequate.
So you are stressed. So you're going to have overthinking, you're going to have some sleepless nights. It might be a bit difficult for you to eat, but you're still able to wake up in the morning, you're still able to go to work, you're still able to go to school, and it will last just a few days, and your life will go on as usual.
That's stress.
That is stress.
Okay.
However, when you are depressed, there is a persistence in these symptoms. So you're going to find your mood is affected. So depression is mostly like a mood disorder or a mood condition. So you're going to be low. You're going to feel empty. And it's not going to happen only because I don't have money or attached to one specific situation and last a couple of hours or a couple of days. It is something that becomes persistent, obviously because we come from a scientific and factual sort of approach where we give numbers to say for at least 2 weeks. And you find it is persisting. And when this sadness is happening, or this feeling of emptiness or feeling low is there, and in Shona people use the word kufungisisa as well. Okay. So you find that it is associated with other things, struggling with sleep. Okay. It's either you can't fall asleep, so you have what's called insomnia, or it's either you're oversleeping. Now mom just spends a lot of time in her bedroom, she doesn't come out, or she doesn't sleep all the time, and you become concerned. It might be eating. You don't have an appetite. You don't enjoy your food as usual as you used to. Or it might actually be the opposite, just overeating.
Okay.
Yes. So some people talk about how they stress eat. It could be an issue of just your interest. where you were used to be so excited to join your friends and go play football, boozers, you find it doesn't interest you anymore, it doesn't excite you anymore. Where you used to be interested in going on your, I don't know, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday church meeting, you don't find it interesting to you or exciting anymore. And for some, it can become even such that they don't see any hope in their life. Okay. And they start losing hope, and that's when people start having thoughts about taking their own life. So now that is depression. You see that the symptoms are more severe, and they start affecting how you function. You are no longer able to work professionally, accomplish your task. You're no longer able to attain your academic grades. You're no longer able to maintain those relations because of the depressive symptoms. And that's the difference between just being stressed and being depressed.
Thank you so much for enlightening us, Dr. Mwamuka. Let's take a short break. Do join me on the next segment. Thank you. Welcome back, viewers, to our program, Wholeness with Naomi. Before we went on a short break, Dr. Mwamuka was sharing with us on depression, how it affects everyday life, and even losing interest in the things that you once were interested in, and also the other things that she was mentioning. Dr. Mwamuka, welcome back to the show.
Thank you, Naomi.
Yes, I want us to continue on the subject of depression that you were sharing about. Before we went on a short break, we were talking about losing interest in the things that one usually used to do.
Yes.
Okay, please continue with that.
So we were just talking about recognizing. So how do we know that someone is depressed? And losing interest is really one of those big key questions that can show you, because we are our brother's keeper. Sometimes the person who is depressed will not know that they are depressed.
I actually wanted to ask you that question, that is this something that one is able to pick on themselves, that I'm actually depressed?
Yes, so that's a good question, because many a times someone who's depressed might not know that they're going through that, and it might go on and continue to become severe depression. And that's how sometimes we lose people, because we didn't see the signs, we didn't pick the symptoms and that someone was depressed. So whenever we then hear about these sad stories about people who have taken their own life to suicide, for example, it's not usually a sudden thing that has happened. There have been telltale signs. They've been showing some symptoms, but maybe we thought, oh, because he's a teenager, teenagers are like that. They prefer to stay in their own room. They don't like the food that so we might not be able to pick it. So looking at those small little interests, if your child used to like playing games a lot on their phone and you were constantly fighting about it, and because the fights have stopped, it might actually mean they're not okay, because especially when you look at depression in younger people, it prevents a little differently from how the classical way that I was describing before we went to the break.
Okay. You know, as a mother, when, for example, the example you gave of you were fighting with your child about the phone, and at some point they stop, as a mom, I would think, oh, it has worked and I'm happy about it, but not realizing that maybe there's something underneath the behavior that my child is now showing. So that does require a lot of, you know, as you said, being a brother's keeper, even if it's your child, just noticing those small details about your child. It's a friend, a colleague, noticing that information about that particular person. But after having assessed and seen that maybe something is wrong with my child, something is wrong with my friend, then what?
And that's a very good question that you asked. Now that I've seen this, what do I do? And sometimes our responses are the ones that matter the most, and the ones that can either make a difference or can worsen the situation, depending at what stage someone is. So one of the three things we talk about is, for example, if we have a crisis and there is something terrible that has gone on, we do what we call first aid, right? Yes. Physically, or you're playing a sport, you get hurt. What's the first thing we do? We call for help. And when the helpers come, you don't do it alone. You ask for others. What do? You ask what is wrong, right? and then or someone can show you this is the wound, and what we do is we use the basic things that we have available. And the same applies for mental health, because there's also mental health first aid. So first thing is, like you said, we look. What are we looking for? Are we able to recognize change in the small things that we talked about, either a change in behavior, changing in eating patterns, change in the amount that I talk. I personally am a person who talks a lot. Imagine you work with me and all of a sudden all I do is hi, and that's it. I go in my office, I don't speak to anybody. So all those kind of things. So firstly, now you have looked. The next thing is you listen. And when we listen, especially in the context of mental health, we talk about listening without judging. So you can approach the person and ask, I have noticed that you have not been coming to the tea room with us like you usually do. Is everything okay? One thing that we generally divert to, which might be because of our social culture and all, is the tendency to rush to give advice.
That is something which is quite common.
So we don't even listen to what is the person going through. So listening sometimes is one of the big things that we can do, especially for less severe forms of depression or for when someone is stressed. Sometimes what someone just needs is to be able to take all those overthinking that's going on, the thoughts in their mind, to offload it and speak to someone. And this is where the effect of human connection comes in. Sometimes what one requires is just to be able to connect with someone who listens to them without judging, who is listening to them empathetically, putting themselves in another person's shoes. And if it is something that you're not an expert on, that you do not have experience on, you don't have to give advice. All you need to say is, I do not have experience in this, but it sounds like it's something that is really troubling you. I might not know exactly what you're going through, but I understand, I hear you. The next question then is, how do you want me to support you? So it's good to always pose that question. If you also even have a younger child, you would notice that sometimes, even as adults, we rush to try and prescribe how they should do things. But if you have strong-minded kids like my own, they'll be like, no, but this is how I want to do it. But you would have already rushed to say, no, it seems like you're struggling with opening this bottle. Come, let me do it for you. Instead of saying, since you're struggling with this, how do you want me to help you? So many a times you find those people have what they want. Oh no, maybe all I wanted was someone to talk to.
Okay. And what I'm really liking about what you're saying is that it puts the person that has the burden in a position where they actually tell you what they need without you prescribing or giving what you think they need. One of the things from your sharing, Dr. Mwamuka, as I was just listening through, was really a statement that I heard from someone which says healing starts sometimes when someone feels heard. And that human-to-human connection does play a very big role, where someone just feels they've been heard. And when we're talking about mental health, it's something which is quite important and key. And even as you are your brother's keeper viewers, it's important to also be that safe space. If someone shares something in confidence with you, it's really important for you to keep those things that someone would have shared with you in confidence. And that is how we are able to build safe communities around us, safe spaces around us, which enables people to be vulnerable with whatever challenges that they may be going through. As you heard from Dr. Mwamuka, she was sharing, stress is something that is part of everyday life. At one point or another, you are going to be on a path that you may experience that stress, in your path. And that in that season, it's for your brother, it's for your sister, it's for your work colleague. How can you support that person in that season of their lives? How can you hold their hand in the way that they also want to be held? Thank you so much for that sharing, Dr. Mwamuka. Welcome back, viewers, to our program, Wholeness with Naomi. Before we went on a short break, Dr. Mwamuka was sharing with us some of the tools that you can use if you're supporting someone that may be undergoing stress in their lives. What are some of the tools, Dr. Mwamuka, that people can use, either as they support or even if they're finding themselves in that space where they are depressed?
Yes. So one of the things that I believe in the most, even in my line of work, is leveraging on what's available to you. Okay. Not everyone can afford to come to me as a psychiatrist. Not everyone can afford to come to a clinical psychologist, right? Mm-hmm. But we have, remember when we started the show, we talked about the definition of mental health and how mental health one should be able to contribute to the community that they are in. So it means that community is an important facet of one's life, because we are even defining mental health based on the community. Therefore, you can also leverage the community in which that you're in to be able to ensure that you have good mental health or for your well-being. So number one, in your family, do you have that support structure? Okay. And I understand that, yes, that comes with a bit of structure. So you can reach out for help when you're able. This is for someone who's able to recognize that I'm going through things, I am stressed, or I think I might be depressed. So you can reach out within your family. You know someone that can support you, be it your brother, be it your sister. And this is where our traditional African culture, Zimbabwean culture comes in. Yes. For those who have that big extended family, there's always a tete somewhere, a sekuru, someone who's available to support you. And that's the privilege that others will have, those who have remained in Zimbabwe, and something that those who have gone abroad yearn for a lot most of the times, that they don't have someone, you know, when the marriage is not going well, there's no sekuru to go to and say, complain about what's going on or the stress that's coming in because of work. Because it's just you, your partner, and your child. There's no one else. So that's number one.
But whilst we're there, Dr. Mwamuka, I want you to just touch on it. Thank you for bringing the aspect of whilst one has relocated outside of Zimbabwe. And this is something that has happened to where we have experienced that in our families, where there's one or more people that have really relocated outside the country. And they may also be finding it hard. That stress of life, it can come with even just the grief of leaving your country and you're trying to settle in another country, and depression is one of the things that they may experience. They are outside of the community that they once were in. How can they reach out for help?
So remember connecting, we talked about the human connection. Connection is not always physical. Okay. Many times all of us are on our phones, but what are we doing with the phones? Are we using them in a productive manner? So it then comes to intentionally creating the connections. Okay. So you can still connect. We can still connect with Naomi. She's in Zimbabwe, here in the UK. You can make an appointment with her, have a session with her, because maybe you resonate better with a Zimbabwean therapist or someone who's back home, or you resonate better with your tete who's back home. So we need to use the things that are available to us and not just use it to be scrolling on TikTok and not getting anything that feeds us and improves our mental health in any way. So we can use those connections, but also there are things that you can do for yourself. When you are still in a state to do so, and this is helpful, this is where self-care comes in. Okay. What are you doing for yourself, even though maybe you might not have that community within your reach? Okay. Are you exercising? Are you just taking a walk every day? Are you grounding yourself, looking at the nature that's within your reach? Are you talking to, your colleagues at work during your tea break, or are you avoiding them? So it's the small things that you also do for yourself. Do you read a book sometimes and take that time for yourself? Are you taking time to go get your hair done or getting your nails done?
I find that quite therapeutic, actually.
I can see evidently.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mwamuka, for joining us on this episode today. She was, I think you've heard it. Let's be intentional about the community around us. We live in a community. We are wired to connect. Let us be our brother's keeper. Let us maintain a good mental health. But in the meantime, do continue in wholeness. Thank you.